Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Only Murders in My Mind. It's Thursday, it's 5 o'clock and I have with me Liz Hedgehog.
Hello.
Still no Mike. But once again, he has contributed to this episode and I particularly thank him for that because I've had a busy week. So my research was a bit lacking, to be honest with you. And it's all good stuff because today we are going to talk about real life murder mysteries from the US of A in the 1800s. So not ones you've probably all heard of, though you may have done. Depends.
Mine might be, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is a very famous one, isn't it? You're the one you're going to talk
Partly
about.
why I chose it.
So I'm going to kick off with one which I'd never heard of, but when I was reading it was like, this is really grisly. But Liz and I were discussing this particular case just before we started recording, and she said there was a lot of press interest. And this person may have been paid money from newspapers to embellish his crimes because that would have sold more copies. So, I mean, what he did was bad enough, don't get me wrong. But was it as bad as he said? We're not sure. I mean, some of it there's evidence to say what he said was true. But others was a bit of speculation. So it's H.H. Holmes and the Murder Castle. And this is 1890s.
And H.H. Holmes was one of his aliases.
Oh, well, when I saw it, I thought, really?
Well, his real name was Herman Webster Mudgett, so I can see why you'd go for an alias, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd change my name as well. And he was a serial killer, and he lured people to a hotel that he had designed and built especially for murder.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But yes, apparently he was also a con artist. But he wasn't active for that long. According to what I've got here, he was active between 1891 and 1894. So we got a lot of stuff done in a short time.
He was a busy chap, wasn't he?
He was multitasking.
When we say men can't... Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that, am I?
Maybe we shouldn't go there.
No, edit that one.
Because your Mike's not here, we'd hear all about it.
Yeah. So, yes, he had a background of fraud, and apparently he moved to Chicago in the late 1880s, posing as a wealthy entrepreneur.
And he was known as the Beast of Chicago. He's got some great...
titles and things,
sobriquets. Yes, the Devil in the White City, or the Torture Doctor.
All true, but are they? That's the thing. Apparently, he built this 3-story building, which later became famous as the Murder Castle, but it was actually officially seen as a hotel. But it was a maze of death, complete with secret passages,
allegedly.
hidden rooms.
Sorry, I'm going to be doing this a lot.
Trapdoors, gas chambers, and basement equipped.
That is a lot of work.
It
I
is.
mean, how did he get all this done, in addition to all the swindling and conning?
I want to know who his architect was.
When did he sleep? How did he get planning? He probably didn't get planning. That was probably one of his crimes.
Yes, and in the basement there were acid vats, quicklime pits, and a crematorium.
Oh, I nearly spat my tea out for that.
Flipping heck.
Yes, indeed.
Oh my goodness me. So the first floor of the house contained businesses, including Holmes' own pharmacy. Well, that says a lot straight away. If he was a pharmacist of any sort. Don't know whether he was trained. The second and third floors contained guest rooms. Some were soundproofed. Others with trapdoors leading to the basement. So if the second and third floor had trapdoors leading to the basement,
allegedly,
they had a long way to fall, didn't they?
They did, yes.
I'm just
well,
thinking.
It says here that all this about the murder castle and the torture chambers and the trapdoors and the gas chambers and the crematorium, etc., was all fabricated by the yellow press.
Oh, why the yellow?
Well,
they're not reliable.
In journalism, apparently, yellow journalism and the yellow press are American newspapers that use eye-catching headlines and sensationalized exaggerations. So tabloid It's the American equivalent of tabloid, basically. So the New York World, Joseph Pulitzer Prize, I'm not sure, told its editors to use sensationalism, crusades against corruption, and lavish use of illustrations to boost circulation. William Randolph Hearst then purchased the rival New York Journal in 1895. They engaged in an intense circulation war at a time when most men bought one copy every day from rival street vendors.
Yeah,
so
big business, wasn't
obviously, you had to shout as loud as you could. And apparently the term yellow journalism came from the innovative, popular Yellow Kid comic strip that was published first in the World and later in the Journal.
Ah, right, okay.
There you go. But yes, it's so exaggerated headlines, unverified claims, partisan agendas, and focus on crime, scandal, sports, and violence. And they thought it might even have pushed the US into the Spanish-American War.
Oh.
So, it even potentially had an impact on history.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you believe what you read in the newspaper, it could sway
well,
you.
people do, though. It's scary.
Yeah, it is. As I say, don't believe anything you read, and these days only probably about 50% of what you see, because things can be.
You can believe my good reviews; they're okay.
Oh yeah,
and Carol's.
Yeah,
and Mike's.
I mean, people when they're on camera, they use shades and things to make themselves look nicer, don't they? And all that.
Oh, filters and
things. Thank you, filters.
Yes.
So yeah, and sometimes it's just an AI figure. It's not really a real person anyway. The crimes, such as we know, he lured victims with job offers. Come work at my hotel. Romantic promises. I wonder what he looked like.
Hang on a minute. I've got a mugshot of him.
Ooh,
there you go.
Oh, I suppose he wasn't bad looking.
Would you accept a romantic promise from this man?
Perhaps in the 1800s, I might.
That moustache is like huge.
Yes.
Yeah, he's wearing a big bowler hat as well.
Yeah, so. He hasn't got a scar running down his face. Or
no, he doesn't really look like a serial killer. Got to be said. I mean, that's probably most serial killers don't.
No, true.
But anyway, apparently he confessed to 27 murders.
Yeah.
Although some of those people were actually still alive. So, yeah. He had one confirmed victim, and then there were suspected victims, which is 9+.
Right.
But according to the Yellow Press, could have been 200.
Yes, I got that as well.
They inflated it somewhat, I think.
Just a bit, yeah.
People who might possibly, ever have come across this man, probably.
He said that a lot of his victims were females, and a lot of females were drawn to to Chicago in 1893 because it was the World Fair there. And he said employees who mysteriously disappeared, that sort of thing. And all the stats that Liz has just told you. However, his downfall and capture was he was arrested for insurance fraud.
There you go,
in
you see.
1894, which led to an investigation into his past crimes. And a search of the murder castle uncovered human remains, bone fragments, and evidence of dismemberment. But as I say, whether we believe what the newspapers said, I don't know. He was convicted of multiple murders, including his business partner, Benjamin Pizzella, and their family.
I think he was a bit of an accomplice as well.
Ah, right.
So yeah, it was an interesting one.
No, not a good man then.
No, but apparently during his confession, Holmes stated his usual method of killing was to suffocate his victims using various means, including overdose of chloroform, overexposure to lighting gas fumes, gaslighting, and trapping them in an airless vault.
Ooh.
Also, apparently, he claimed to have starved people and burnt victims alive in the castle.
It all sounds a bit,
Yeah, throwing a lot of things at it.
Yes. Some of this stuff I think would have been noticed by somebody somewhere.
I think it probably would.
Well, anyway, he got found guilty and he did hang on May the 7th, 1896. But his legend grew, inspiring books and movies. So many questions. Well, sort of how many victims did he actually kill? Did he have an accomplice? Well, maybe he did. Yeah.
Well, I think Pittersell, it is.
Pittersell.
Yeah. Well, apparently, while Holmes was working in the Chemical Bank building on Dearborn Street, which would be in Chicago, Holmes and Pittersell became friends, and this Benjamin guy was a carpenter with a criminal past, who was exhibiting in the same building a coal bin he had invented.
Oh.
Apparently, Holmes used this guy for several criminal schemes. A district attorney later described him as Holmes's tool, his creature.
Right. So he did have somebody helping him, didn't he?
Yes.
Sounds like it. The murder castle, if it existed, was mysteriously destroyed by fire in 1895. Thank goodness, says I.
But convenient that, none of the stuff can actually be confirmed or
yeah, that is
otherwise,
convenient,
yes.
and its eerie history still persists.
But yes, going on murder of his accomplice, Holmes was arrested and briefly jailed for the first time on the charge of selling mortgaged goods.
So that'll be the one I said.
He was promptly bailed out, but while he was in jail,
yeah,
he had a chat with an outlaw who was there serving a 25-year sentence, and he got some ideas. So he concocted a plan to swindle an insurance company out of $10,000 by taking out a policy on himself and then faking his death. So he promised this old lag commission in exchange for the name of a lawyer that he could trust. Anyway, this lawyer, who was presumably a bit crooked, thought this was a great idea and agreed to play the part. But the faking his own death bit didn't work because the insurance company was suspicious and they refused to pay. And instead of thinking, okay, that didn't work, he decided, I'm going to do it again.
Oh, for goodness sake.
But this time I'm going to get my mate Benjamin involved. So, Benjamin Pittersell, if it is that, agreed to fake his own death so his wife could collect on a $10,000 life insurance policy, which he would split with Holmes and the lawyer. So it was supposed to be happening in Philadelphia. He was going to assume a fake ID as an inventor and then be killed and disfigured in a lab explosion. So Holmes's job here was supposed to find a corpse to play the role of Pittersell. Bit Operation Mincemeat, this. So instead, what he did was he killed him, knocked him unconscious with chloroform, set his body on fire. So he was definitely dead.
Yeah.
Holmes collected the payout on the basis of this is a genuine corpse, because it obviously was. And then went on to manipulate Benjamin's wife. And then pinched 3 of their kids and went off with them.
So, yeah, he was quite a person, wasn't he? Quite a character.
Oh, yes. Well, also, it says he was staying at another location with his current wife, who was unaware of the whole thing. Because I think he'd married various people and not bothered to get divorced first.
Yeah. Why bother with all that? It's only paperwork.
I just wonder if he kept track of any of it. He just kind of kept going on and doing things.
I'm going to bang my head on the microphone.
It is quite something, isn't it?
Oh, what?
But yes, he was finally arrested in Boston after he'd been tracked there by the Pinkerton detectives.
Oh, yes!
Yes, they got our man. Well, apparently he was held on an outstanding warrant for horse theft in Texas.
Was that a hanging offence then, though?
I have no idea, but you see, they found a couple of bodies and then began investigating the building. So they didn't find any evidence which could have convicted him because there was only very circumstantial evidence. So there was a piece of human bone, there was a burned gold watch chain, and there was a little bit of hair. So basically they thought, well, we'll try him for this guy, his mate, because that's very, very clear. So yes, following his conviction, he confessed to 27 murders in Chicago, Indianapolis and Toronto, and 6 attempted murders. He was paid $7,500 by the Hearst newspapers
that was
in
a
exchange
lot of
for
money.
his confession.
Yeah.
So yes, there you go.
So I mean, the thing is as well, we've seen it in more recent murders where somebody has, they've confessed to doing, 3 or 4 murders, and then not so much. Well, they might have done it for money, but very often it's because they want the attention. Then they'll go on. I also, a year later, I also killed so and so as well. And if you get me into a better prison, I'll tell you where the body is. These sort of negotiate.
As a bargaining tool, yeah.
And sometimes they have, and sometimes they haven't.
Yes. But a couple more creepy things. There'd been a guy who'd been the caretaker of the murder castle.
Of the hotel.
Yeah. And apparently he committed suicide by taking strychnine. And his body was found with a note that read, "I couldn't sleep."
That would drive you mad, wouldn't it?
Indeed, but yes. In 2017, there were allegations that Holmes had escaped execution. I don't know how, because they hung him. Anyway, they exhumed him for testing. And due to his coffin being contained in concrete, his body hadn't decomposed normally. His clothes were almost perfect. His moustache was intact. There you go.
We could start talking about vampires now, couldn't we? We could make this even bigger, this legacy.
Well, he's turned up quite a lot in popular culture.
Yeah.
So the novel American Gothic is a fictionalized version,
Of
apparently. Devil in the White City with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
So, yes, Supernatural. He was involved.
I knew about the Devil in the White City, but I didn't know about the others.
Yeah, well, I had never heard of this man, so that really is quite a catalogue.
You're not joking. When I read it, I thought, flipping it. I mean, we have film night on a Friday, and we watched American Psycho, didn't we, on Friday?
Oh, that's a good one.
Never watched it before, obviously. Well, we do rewatch films, but it's not what I was expecting, and I don't know what I was expecting, but it was had lots of twists and turns to it, and that's all I'm saying in case you're going to watch it. We try not to give spoilers, and if we do, it's by accident. We don't mean to. But yours, the one you're going to talk about is notorious, really, isn't it?
Very much so, yes. So I thought I would, just for, why not? I would bring up Lizzy Bordern.
Yeah.
So she was tried and acquitted of the axe murders of her father and stepmother in Massachusetts. No one else was charged. And although most of the other residents cut her dead afterwards, she carried on living in Fall River afterwards. So she died of pneumonia at the age of 66, just days before the death of her older sister.
So she got away with murder? Maybe.
If it was her. So it's an interesting one, because the thing is, it sounds like her family, had a reasonable amount of money. Well, a heck of a lot of money, in fact. At the time of her father's murder, his estate was valued at $300,000. Which back then was a lot of money. It was like 10 million.
It would be
the equivalent of 10 million today.
It's an awful lot of money.
Yeah, but despite his wealth, he was known for his frugality.
So he was mean. He was tight-fisted.
Well, they didn't even have indoor plumbing.
Right.
Even though that was completely normal,
that was normal
in a well-to-do
house.
Yeah. And the house stood in quite a nice area, but the wealthiest residents of Fall River lived in a more fashionable neighbourhood, which was further from the industrial areas. The children had a religious upbringing. Lizzy Bordern was involved in religious organisations. She was also a member of the Ladies' Fruit and Flower Mission.
Oh, how nice.
I know, very nice. So anyway, Lizzy's mother had died and Andrew remarried. There is some doubt about whether it was a cordial relationship between Lizzy and her stepmother. Yeah. She did believe that Abby had married her father for his wealth.
Yeah. Yes. Well, especially with her being, was she close to her dad, do you think?
Oh, good question. He sounds like an interesting character. Apparently, the live-in maid, testified that the daughters rarely ate meals with their parents. Oh, wow. One of those sorts of families. In 1892, Andrew Bordern killed lots of pigeons in his barn with a hatchet because he thought that local children were coming to hunt them. Lizzy had built a roost for the pigeons, which I think she, thought of as pets, so that would have upset her quite a lot. There was a family argument. Both sisters took a few days out, stayed elsewhere. And after returning to Fall River a week before the murders, Lizzy chose to stay in a local rooming house before going back home.
Well, she could have been planning something then, couldn't she?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, apparently her dad was also giving real estate to various branches of the stepmother's family. So the stepmother's sister received a house and the daughters received a rental property. But yeah, for several days before the murders, the entire household had been violently ill. A family friend speculated that mutton left on the stove to use over several days was the cause. Apparently, the stepmother had feared poison because Andrew Bordern wasn't a popular man.
Right. Well, it doesn't sound very nice.
So, apparently what happened was Andrew Bordern had left for a morning walk. Abby, the stepmother, went upstairs to go and make the bed of the guest room. And there she was struck on the side of the head with a hatchet. Multiple times. 18 direct hits.
Oh!
Yes.
Couldn't have a headache in the morning.
Definitely. Andrew returned at about 10:30 a.m. Couldn't open the door with a key, so he knocked. The maid went to sort it out. And then she later testified that she heard Lizzy laughing immediately afterwards and said the laughter was coming from the top of the stairs. Abby would already have been dead by this time, and anyone on that floor would have been able to see the body.
Right.
Because the door was open. Lizzy later denied being upstairs and said that Abby was out. So the maid removed Andrew's boots, helped him into his slippers. He lay down on the sofa for a nap. Then at 11:10, Lizzy called from downstairs, "Maggie, come quick, father's dead, someone came in and killed him." He was struck 10 or 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon. Do you feel a pattern emerging?
There is, yes.
Yes. So there you go.
But she got off because there was no, or was it like the maid's word against hers? You think that's what it boiled down to?
Well, it sounds like a complete mess because apparently Lizzie's answers to the police officers contradicted each other. So, first of all, she said she'd heard a groan or a scraping noise before she came into the house. 2 hours later, she told the police she heard nothing and didn't realise anything was wrong when she came back into the house. Then when she was asked where a stepmother was, she said, Abby got a note asking her to visit a sick friend. But she also said she thought Abby had returned and asked if someone could go upstairs and look for her. So a neighbour was halfway up the stairs when they looked into the guest room and then saw Abby lying on the floor. She was not checked for bloodstains despite her changing story. The police did search her room, but they admitted at the trial they didn't do a proper search because Lizzy wasn't feeling well. In the basement, police found 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a hatchet head with a broken handle.
Ooh.
It feels like there's too many axes, doesn't it?
Yeah. How many axes does one household need?
Good question.
I can understand replacing the one with the broken handle.
Yeah, well, they thought that one was the murder weapon because the break appeared fresh.
Right.
And also there was ash and dust on the head of it, but it looked as if it had been put on deliberately to make it look like it had been there for a while. But anyway, the police didn't take any of the tools away. What they did do was they tested the family's milk and the victim's stomach for poison, which they didn't find any of. Residents thought that Lizzy had bought hydrocyanic acid from the local chemist. She said that was to clean her furs.
Oh.
Although the medical examiner said it wouldn't do that. So, yeah. Lizzy and Emma's friend decided to stay with the sisters the night following the murders. I think that's pretty brave.
Yeah.
And an uncle, I think it was, spent the night in the attic. Police were stationed around the house, during which an officer said he'd seen Lizzy enter the cellar with Russell, carrying a lamp and a slop pail. Both women left the cellar, after which Lizzy returned alone. And he said he thought she was bent over the sink. So, yeah, the following day, police conducted a more thorough search of the house, inspecting the clothing of the sisters and confiscating the broken hatchet. Then they finally informed Lizzy that she was a suspect in the murders.
Belief, doesn't it?
The next morning, someone entered the kitchen to find Lizzy Bordern tearing up a dress. She explained she was planning to put it on the fire because it was covered in paint. It was never determined whether it was the dress she'd been wearing on the day of the murders.
Oh, I mean, I know it's a long time ago, but flipping it, there must have been great big arrows pointing at her head.
You would
know
think so, yeah.
Oh,
but apparently
goodness.
At the trial, she was pretty spaced out because she'd been prescribed morphine to calm her nerves.
Okay.
So quite often she'd refuse to answer a question, even if it would have done her some good.
What's wrong with warm milk with nutmeg in?
I don't know, not potent enough, maybe. But anyway, apparently she was jailed after the warrant of arrest. The inquest received significant press attention nationwide, including an extensive 3-page write-up in the Boston Globe. Grand jury began hearing evidence on November the 7th. Bordern was indicted on December the 2nd. The trial took place starting June the 5th the next year. 5 days before the trial's commencement, another axe murder occurred in Fall River. So yes, they found someone hacked to death in her kitchen. The similarities were striking and noted by jurors.
Oh.
Ooh. Yes, they convicted someone of the murder, but he was determined not to have been anywhere near Fall River when the Bordern murders happened.
See, I'm thinking like it was 2 people, whether he was involved, but he couldn't have been if they proved he was nowhere near.
Yes.
The place where the other people were murdered.
Mm-hmm. But yes, so at the trial, apparently the whole thing with her buying prussic acid, purportedly for cleaning a sealskin cloak, they excluded that evidence because the judge ruled that because it was the day before the murders, it was too remote in time to have any connection, which doesn't make any sense to me. No, but there you go.
What's the sort of name for it when it, apart? Is that the only name? There's no like, it's not like vitamin C or
prussic acid.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I've heard of it as being used in it's hydrogen cyanide.
Oh well, gosh, yeah.
Yes, so that's not going to be good.
No. And it would burn the sealskin, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, they said the medical examiner would have said that would not work to clean anything. But yeah, apparently the presiding associate justice delivered a lengthy summary that supported the defence as is charged to the jury. After an hour and a half of deliberation, the jury acquitted Lizzy Bordern.
Oh, that's not long either, is it?
Not really.
No. Go in the jury room, make a cup of tea, and come out again, basically.
But yes, although she was acquitted, she remained the prime suspect.
Yeah, it sounds like a real botch up on the detective work, doesn't it?
It is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, there were like other people suggested, but yeah, I don't think anyone was ever charged. But yes, after the trial, the Bordern sisters moved into a large modern house in the nice neighbourhood in Fall River.
Oh, my record. Was this with their inheritance? It must have been, mustn't it, really?
Yes. So there you go.
She lived happily with her sister, I presume. She didn't try and kill her, did she?
No, she didn't try and kill her. But yes, apparently in 1905, shortly after an argument over a party that Lizzy had given for an actress, Emma moved out of the house and never saw her sister again. So there you go. 22 years later, she died of pneumonia.
So she had quite, well, what would she be? What would she be when she died? In her 50s?
She was about 66.
66,
so,
yeah. So when you think about the life expectancy back then, she did live quite a long life.
She did pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if anybody has ever like reinvestigated it. I'm sure somebody must have done. True crimes and everything.
So, but I don't know if this is still true. I hope it is. But apparently, the Bordern house became a museum, and it operates a bed and breakfast with 1890s styling. So you could go there for an authentic experience
of being murdered.
Well, hopefully not murdered, but there you go.
Yeah. It just, I mean, what she was saying, I mean, you could say, well, she was in a state of shock.
Yeah, someone suggested that she might have done it when she was in a fugue state.
Yeah. And
had no memory of it.
Yeah, that could have happened, yeah. And, of course, back then as well, we didn't recognise quite complicated mental illnesses, did we? Like schizophrenia, where people heard voices telling them to do things and all that sort of thing, bipolar and all that. So, yeah. It does sound really peculiar.
Yeah. I mean, there's various speculation about other things that might have happened, and I'm sure you can read about those.
Well, that's it. There'll always be the theories, won't there?
There will.
Yeah. So, have we used all our time up on those two?
I think we've discussed those two pretty thoroughly.
Yes. More for the future.
Definitely.
Yeah. If you like this sort of thing, please let us know. We tend not to talk about sort of things that are more modern. We tend to go back into history and talk about,
if it's real, I think we prefer the cold case type
the cold cases that we look at, and as I say, that some of them are absolutely fascinating. And I would say for every one we research that where they got caught and hung, we've also researched one where they've got away. Or they seem to have disappeared. Maybe they didn't get away in the long run. So, so we'll leave it there. So, like and subscribe.
Oh, yes, please do.
Our numbers are going up slowly, as I say. You know, only another 8,000 and we'll probably get somebody offering us money.
Oh, steady on, Carol.
Yeah, maybe not. We don't do it for the money, do we, Liz?
No, we don't.
Good job. No, we do it because we enjoy it, and I hope you do as well. So, from Liz and me, goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.